Hello, my name is Jeremy with Faithful Guardian Training Center, and today we are going to be talking about shock. The first thing that you need to know about shock is that it essentially describes a state of collapse and failure of the cardiovascular system. And the way that that failure happens is going to be due to one of three things, or a combination of the three. And those three things are determined by the perfusion triangle. The perfusion triangle it comprises the heart, which is known as the pump. It comprises the blood, which is going to be the actual contents that's circulating the oxygen, glucose, all the other nutrients. And then you have the vessels, which those are the pipes that are actually carrying the fluid that's being pushed through the system by the pump, which is the heart. So you have the heart, the blood, and the vessels. And whenever one of those three things goes into a state of a disease process or failure, that is what shock actually is. The goal of the perfusion triangle is to be able to circulate the nutrients in adequate amounts of pressure throughout the body to ensure that we have perfusion, which is the exchange of the nutrients and offloading of the waste products. And so the way that it does this is by maintaining a cardiac output. Now, a cardiac output, that is measured by stroke volume times your heart rate. And that right there, that is something that is impossible for us to be able to read in the field without special equipment. This is something that's exclusively monitored in the hospital or initiated in the hospital in most cases. But just because we can't see it immediately in the field does not mean that it does not exist. Now, the goal of the cardiac output is to maintain something that is called a MAP, or a mean arterial pressure. Your mean arterial pressure, it is an average of all the amounts of pressure that is inside of your vessels at any one time. And the way that we calculate your MAP, or your mean arterial pressure, is going to be this formula. It's going to be your systolic pressure plus your diastolic again, and then you get that number and you divide it by 3. So for example, if I had somebody with a blood pressure of 150/75, their systolic pressure is going to be 150. Their diastolic pressure is going to be 75. So what this means is that you take your systolic pressure plus your diastolic, 150 plus 75 is going to equal 125 or 225, plus another 75. That equals 300. You take that 300 and you divide that by 3, and that's going to give you 100 as your MAP. So your mean arterial pressure equals 100. Now we need to have a MAP over 60 to be able to adequately have perfusion throughout your organs, and this includes your kidneys, your brain, your heart. Everything has to have a pressure to support the fluid that's going through it to be able to cause the perfusion, to cause all that to happen. So if you have a MAP less than 60, what this means is that you're not perfusing in an adult. Now, so what this means is that we cannot exclusively control a MAP in most patients directly. What we do control is we can control their systolic pressure. And we can do this by a couple different ways. The number one way is going to be by giving a fluid bolus. This could mean raising somebody's legs, which is going to dump the fluid from their legs up to their core, which is going to throw it into more available circulation, and that's going to cause somebody's blood pressure to increase. Or we can give a fluid bolus, and that is going to, as an advanced EMT, you can give that fluid bolus, and that's going to increase the fluid inside of the container, which is going to make the pressure go up higher. And then we can also directly affect the container size as a paramedic by giving vasopressors such as epinephrine or dopamine or dobutamine or any of the other pressors. And so what this is going to do is, and the reason it's called vasopressor is going to be because it compresses the vessels and it causes them to become smaller. So I've essentially made the container smaller, which makes it easier for the pressure to increase. Now, your body naturally does these things with the pressors, naturally by your baroreceptors. You have baroreceptors, which is a way of measuring pressure. They are in your aortic arch and in your carotid sinuses. So what this means is that if these baroreceptors, they notice that the pressure is going to start decreasing, it's going to send out signals, which are going to send out hormones that are going to cause vasoconstriction and could cause your heart rate to increase. And in some cases this is productive, in some cases this is going to be counterproductive, and we can talk about those at a later date. But those are really going to be the big core concepts of shock. You have your perfusion triangle, which is going to be your heart, your blood, and your vessels. And shock is going to be a failure of one of those three components. The goal of perfusion, or the goal of your perfusion triangle, is to have perfusion, and it's going to do this by maintaining an adequate cardiac output, which is maintained, or which is monitored by your stroke volume times your heart rate. And just because we cannot calculate the stroke volume in the field does not mean that it's not real. We also need to know that we need to maintain our MAP above 60, or we do not have any perfusion. And you calculate your MAP by doing your systolic plus your diastolic plus your diastolic. You take that number, divide it by 3. Okay? And your body regulates all of these procedures, all of these factors into it by these things called baroreceptors. Baroreceptors measure the pressure, and the goal of that pressure is to maintain that MAP, that mean arterial pressure, above 60. And this is an introductory to shock.